This prison was surrounded by 14,000 kilometers of frozen wilderness. Nobody had ever escaped, because escaping meant certain death, but one prisoner decided to try anyway. But how did he end up here? Let's go back to the beginning. At the beginning of the story, we see a prison in Siberia where a large number of German soldiers are lined up. After World War II ended, Russia captured many German soldiers and forced them to work day and night in coal mines. The prison had very little security, yet no one ever tried to escape because it was surrounded by endless snow and located nearly 14,000 kilometers away from the nearest human settlement. Even if a prisoner managed to escape, freezing to death in Siberia's brutal cold was almost guaranteed. The prison stood in the middle of thousands of kilometers of icy wilderness. That was why no prisoner even dared to think about escaping. However, among them was one prisoner with a very sharp mind who desperately wanted to escape and return to his wife and daughter. His name was Clemens Forell, and he had been sentenced to 25 years in this prison. He refused to let half of his life disappear behind these walls. No matter what, Clemens was determined to escape. Fortunately, one day he finally got his chance. He hid inside a coal freight train and escaped from the prison. As soon as he stepped outside and looked up at the open sky filled with stars, he was overwhelmed with happiness. But that happiness didn't last long. After traveling a short distance, the train suddenly stopped. When Clemens looked outside, he saw a Russian soldier standing in front of him with a rifle pointed directly at him. Unfortunately, Clemens was captured and, as punishment for attempting to escape, he was locked inside an open-air cell. The freezing cold was unbearable, and the rain during the night made his condition even worse. He wasn't kept there for just a few hours, but for 2 entire days. 2 days later, the prison warden arrived, took him out of the cell, and surprisingly didn't torture him at all. Instead, he simply said, "Your fellow prisoners have been waiting for you." When Clemens returned to the other prisoners, they were all standing there with sticks and clubs in their hands. They were furious because due to his escape attempt, they had been left without food for the past 2 days. At that moment, Clemens finally understood what the warden had meant. The moment they saw him, the prisoners attacked him and beat him brutally. He was so badly injured that he had to be admitted to the prison hospital. The prison doctor was also a German prisoner. As soon as Clemens regained consciousness, he told the doctor that he wanted to escape again and needed his help. The doctor was shocked by Clemens's determination. Even after everything he had suffered, he still refused to give up. The doctor tried to convince him that escaping this prison alive was impossible. Even if he managed to escape, the freezing weather outside would eventually kill him. But the doctor also revealed another harsh truth. If he stayed in the prison, death was inevitable anyway because the coal mines contained extremely high levels of carbon, which entered the workers' bodies through the air and caused deadly diseases like cancer. So the doctor encouraged Clemens to make one final escape attempt. He gave Clemens all of his warm clothes, boots, and every essential supply he had. He also told him that Russian soldiers secretly stored food near the railway tracks. Along with that, the doctor handed him a rifle so he could protect himself. In reality, the doctor had gathered all these supplies because he had once planned to escape himself. But a week earlier, he had learned that he had cancer and had less than a month left to live. He then handed Clemens a lunchbox and said, "If you survive, please deliver this lunchbox to my family and tell them that I am no longer alive." That night, under the cover of darkness, Clemens escaped once again. This time, instead of hiding on a freight train, he decided to travel on foot. He walked throughout the entire night and continued walking the next morning because he was terrified that the Russian soldiers might catch him again. When the warden discovered the next morning that Clemens had escaped, he immediately went to question the doctor. But before the warden arrived, the doctor had already taken his own life because he knew the warden would torture him to death after learning about Clemens' escape. The warden then sent several Russian soldiers to search for Clemens and ordered them to capture him alive. Even after many days of searching, they couldn't find any trace of him. Fortunately for Clemens, heavy snowfall kept erasing his footprints, making it nearly impossible for anyone to track him. Eventually, everyone began to believe that Clemens had frozen to death in the snow, but the warden refused to accept it. He knew Clemens was mentally strong and would never give up so easily, so he ordered the search to continue. Meanwhile, Clemens kept pushing forward through the brutal snowstorms with incredible determination. 9 days after escaping, he suddenly heard dogs barking. When he turned around, he saw a sled racing toward him. Before he could react, it passed right by him. Suddenly, Clemens opened his eyes and realized it had only been a dream. In reality, he had been walking for 9 straight days, and all of his food had run out. Hunger and exhaustion made every step harder, but he refused to give up and kept moving forward. A few days later, his body finally gave out, and he collapsed unconscious from starvation. Several hours later, when he regained consciousness, he heard a strange sound nearby. Then he spotted a seal, and his eyes immediately lit up with hope. He quickly grabbed his rifle and tried to aim with all the strength he had left, but because of his weakness and exhaustion, he missed the shot, and the seal started running away. After so many days, this was his first real chance to survive, and he couldn't let it slip away. He immediately chased after the seal, but while running, the ice beneath him cracked, causing him to fall into the freezing water and injure his leg. Even though he was hurt, he continued chasing the seal. Just as he was about to fire again, the seal disappeared behind a rock. Clemens carefully moved closer until he spotted it once more. Just before it could dive back into the water, he fired his last bullet. Fortunately, the shot hit the seal. Clemens was overjoyed because he no longer had to worry about food during his journey. For the first time in many days, he ate a full meal, rested for a while, and then continued his journey. Throughout this long journey, Clemens was completely alone. There was nothing around him except endless snow. In such an environment, it would have been easy to lose his sanity. To stay mentally strong, he constantly talked to himself and motivated himself with positive thoughts. He also relied on his compass at all times to make sure he didn't lose his way in the endless frozen wilderness. Days turned into weeks, and after walking continuously for 2 months, Clemens finally spotted a small tree standing alone in the snow. The sight of that tree made him as happy as if he had discovered a hidden treasure. He ran toward it and hugged it tightly. The tree was a sign that after 2 months of walking, he had finally crossed the endless frozen plain and the forest was about to begin. A little farther ahead, everything happened exactly as he had expected. The snowy landscape came to an end and the forest finally began. He was overjoyed to enter the forest. He gathered firewood, built a fire, and for the first time in months, slept peacefully. But no one knew whether the next day would bring him peace or new danger. Meanwhile, the warden was still searching for Clemens. He ordered his search party to cover an area within a 500-kilometer radius. At the same time, Clemens continued walking through the forest when a violent snowstorm suddenly struck. The storm was so powerful that massive trees were being ripped from the ground. As Clemens tried to move forward, a huge tree fell directly on top of him. Fortunately, later that evening, 2 men searching for gold happened to pass through the area. They found Clemens just in time and saved his life. Afterward, the 3 of them continued their journey together, and after many days of traveling, they finally left the frozen wilderness behind. Along the way, they reached a river. To cross it, they built a small wooden boat. While crossing the river, they chatted with each other and shared stories from their childhood. But suddenly, the river's current became much stronger and the boat began to drift out of control. One of the men lost his balance and fell straight into the freezing water. One of the men fell into the river. He didn't know how to swim and immediately began to drown. Seeing this, Clemens jumped into the freezing water and somehow managed to pull him safely back to shore. Meanwhile, their other companion abandoned them and continued the journey alone. He was extremely greedy. Believing that both of them had drowned, he kept all of his friend's gold for himself. A little later, when Clemens and the other man returned to the tent, the man became furious after learning what had happened. He shot the greedy companion and killed him. After that, Clemens and the man gathered their supplies and continued their journey. For many months, they kept moving forward with the hope of finding a human settlement. But then winter returned once again, and the forests were covered beneath a thick white blanket of snow. The man was carrying a very heavy load, making it difficult for him to walk through the deep snow. Seeing this, Clemens tried to help him and said, "Give me your belongings for a while so I can lighten your burden." However, the man became suspicious and thought that Clemens wanted to steal his gold as well. Because of this, he attacked Clemens and pushed him to the ground, knocking him unconscious. A short while later, Clemens regained consciousness and saw a pack of wolves approaching him. To save himself, he quickly climbed a tree, but as he was climbing, one of the wolves grabbed his foot. The tree was too weak and snapped in half, causing Clemens to fall back to the ground. At that moment, he believed his death was certain. Suddenly, gunshots echoed through the forest. When Clemens opened his eyes, he saw that several wolves had been killed while the rest had fled. It turned out that local hunters had arrived just in time and saved his life. They took him to their village, where the villagers treated his injuries. After years of struggling to survive, Clemens had finally reached a human settlement. He was overjoyed to see people again. He stayed in the village for several days, and the villagers treated him with great kindness and hospitality. One day, a letter arrived in the village. It was from the prison warden. The letter stated that a German soldier had escaped from their prison and warned that anyone who gave him shelter would be considered a traitor. Even though no one wanted him to leave, Clemens decided to leave the village because he didn't want the innocent villagers to be punished because of him. Before he left, the villagers gave him food supplies and a hunting dog. For the first time during his long journey, Clemens finally had a companion, and he no longer felt completely alone. The two of them traveled together for many days. Along the way, they spotted a lumber mill, and the dog ran toward it in search of food. To protect his dog, Clemens followed him inside the mill. The workers recognized Clemens and took him to the owner. There, Clemens told the owner his entire story. Everyone felt sorry for him. They gave him food and put him on a train that was heading toward Germany. Clemens was overjoyed because he believed he would finally reach home soon. But he had no idea that the mill owner had secretly informed the warden about him. The warden was now waiting at the train station with his soldiers. Before the train reached the station, Clemens spotted the Russian soldiers from a distance. As soon as he saw an opportunity, he jumped off the moving train and ran. Unfortunately, the Russian soldiers noticed him and immediately began chasing him. Clemens quickly crossed the railway tracks, but suddenly, the warden appeared right in front of him. His heart sank because he believed that all the years of struggle had been wasted. Just before the warden could arrest him, Clemens' dog attacked the warden and bit him. This gave Clemens another chance to escape, and he ran with all the strength he had left. A moment later, he heard a gunshot. When he looked back, he saw that his loyal dog had been killed. Clemens was heartbroken, but he didn't stop running. He kept moving forward with every ounce of strength he had. Soon, he climbed onto a bridge and jumped onto the roof of a moving train passing underneath it. Once again, he managed to escape from the warden. Days continued to pass, and Clemens slowly made progress on his long journey. Before long, the year 1952 arrived. It had now been 7 years since Clemens escaped from prison. At that time, he was in Central Asia, wandering through a village fair. He saw many different kinds of food on display. He desperately wanted to eat, but he had no money, so he forced himself to walk away. Then he noticed two young women selling pancakes. Clemens wanted to buy one, but he didn't even have a single coin in his pocket. Disappointed, he started walking away. One of the young women felt sorry for him. She broke off a piece of a pancake and offered it to him. At first, Clemens felt a little embarrassed. Then, he gratefully thanked the girls and accepted the pancake. There was also a Jewish man at the fair who witnessed everything. Later, Clemens entered a church, and the same man quietly followed him inside. It turned out that the man had once been a prisoner himself. Because of that, instead of turning Clemens over to the police, he decided to help him. He took Clemens to his home. For the first time in many years, Clemens shaved and looked like his old self again. The man then gave Clemens a new passport so he could cross the Russian border and return to Germany. Clemens was deeply grateful. Before leaving, he thanked the man and set off toward the border between Russia and Germany. A few weeks later, Clemens finally reached the Russian border. He handed his passport to the Russian border guard. He was terrified that the guard might recognize him or discover that his passport was fake. Fortunately, neither happened. The guard approved his documents and allowed him to cross the border. Clemens was so overwhelmed with joy that he couldn't stop smiling. At last, he reached the bridge that would take him back to his homeland, Germany. But as soon as he reached the middle of the bridge, a bright light suddenly shined into his eyes. When he opened them, he saw the warden standing in front of him. Clemens looked behind him and realized that he was still standing on Russian soil. That meant the warden still had the authority to arrest him at that moment. Clemens' heart was completely broken because it seemed that all his years of struggle were about to end in failure. But then something happened that even Clemens never expected. The warden stepped aside and allowed him to continue. At first, Clemens couldn't believe it. Then, gathering his courage, he slowly walked forward. The truth was that the warden had become deeply inspired by Clemens' determination to survive and his incredible courage. Because of that, he chose not to arrest him and instead allowed him to return to his homeland. The warden then said, "This battle was only between two soldiers, me and you won. Go, live your life." At last, Clemens crossed the border and returned to Germany. Soon afterward, he arrived near his home, where he saw his wife and daughter. A short time later, they left the house to go to church. Clemens quietly followed them inside. He still hadn't called out to his daughter because she had always believed that one day her father would return. When she turned around, she immediately recognized him. She ran toward him and embraced him tightly. After so many years, Clemens' wife couldn't believe that he was still alive. Finally, the three of them embraced each other, and with that, this true story-based film came to an end. If you enjoyed this story, please take a second to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Creating these movie explanation videos takes a lot of time and effort, and your support truly motivates us to bring you more amazing stories every week. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.